Trudeau, le Bloc québécois vous donne...
Je veux parler un moment de la situation épouvantable au Liban. Tout d'abord, on déplore la perte de 2 Canadiens, mais toutes les familles, les gens au Liban, le peuple libanais est en train de souffrir des moments extrêmement difficiles. C'est d'ailleurs pourquoi j'ai eu beaucoup de conversations là-dessus aux Nations Unies, que ce soit avec mes partenaires du G7, avec la Jordanie, avec le secrétaire général de l'ONU. On a besoin de faire tout ce qu'on peut pour protéger les civils, les innocents, les femmes, les enfants. On a besoin de penser aussi aux familles ici au Canada, les Canadiens d'origine libanaise. J'ai parlé à plusieurs d'entre eux hier pour dire qu'on est avec eux. On pense à tout ce qu'ils sont en train de vivre par rapport à leurs amis, leurs familles. On a besoin de voir que Israël et Hezbollah fassent une désescalation. On a besoin que la violence arrête, puis on va continuer de travailler là-dessus avec nos partenaires à travers le monde. I want to speak for a moment about the terrible situation ongoing in Lebanon right now. First of all, we are devastated by the loss of 2 Canadians, but the entire Lebanese people are suffering right now. Women, children, innocents, suffering terrible violence and fear. This is why I spoke about it yesterday and the day before in New York with leaders of the United Nations, whether it's other NATO allies or the Secretary General or the King of Jordan and others. We're going to keep working on that. I also spoke yesterday with a number of Lebanese Canadians who are worried for their families, for their friends. This is a horrific situation through which they're going. We need to see both Israel and Hezbollah de-escalate. We need to see an end to violence. We need to see civilians protected.
Good to see you, all of you. First and foremost, I would like to address the situation in Lebanon. I'll do my speech in English, and then I'll do it, je vais le faire en français par la suite. So, of course, first I would like to give my condolences to the families and loved ones of the Canadians that have been killed or injured. And my goal is to be in contact with the families in the coming hours. Of course, I share the concerns of many Canadians regarding what's going on in Lebanon and in the Middle East. This conflict must stop. We need urgent de-escalation by parties to prevent, of course, a broader conflict across the region. Too many innocent lives, including women and children, have been killed. And families in northern Israel and southern Lebanon must be able to get back to their homes. Iran must be held accountable for its funding of its violent proxies. I was in New York this morning. I've been in New York for the past couple of days. I had the opportunity to talk with the Foreign Minister of Lebanon. I also had meeting of G7 foreign ministers. I've been in contact also. I've spoken extensively with the Secretary of State of the U.S. And also I've been in contact with the Israeli foreign minister. I'm having also a meeting with the Prime Minister of Lebanon on Saturday in New York. Canada is a friend to the Lebanese people, to the Israeli people, and also to the Palestinian people. More than ever, we need also a ceasefire in Gaza. Hostages must be released, Hamas must lay down its weapons, and it's fundamental that humanitarian aid gets into Gaza. At the end of the day, we think that in order to bring back peace and security to the region, we need a two-state solution where Israelis and Palestinian people will be able to live side by side in peace and security. When it comes to the evacuation, when it comes to the evacuation of Lebanon in particular, I've been, and my team and I have been working on this for months now. Back in May, I went to the region to secure agreements with key countries. Of course, I went to Lebanon to meet with Lebanese officials to make sure that they would coordinate and help Canada should there be an evacuation. I also went to Cyprus, I also went to Turkey, and I also went to Greece and made sure that we would be having agreements with all of these countries should there be a possible evacuation of Lebanon. And also, what we did is we pre-positioned assets now weeks ago in the region. Meanwhile, I've been saying to Canadians in Lebanon to come back home. And I've been saying also to Canadians wanting to go to Lebanon, don't go. Why? Because as Foreign Minister, my priority is to make sure that Canadians are safe. And I was concerned. And so, of course, we will never let down the Canadian Lebanese community. At the same time, what I say to Canadians now in Lebanon, not only is it time to leave, but also commercial flights are still available. And it is, at the end of the day, the most safe and the simplest way to come back home. Because, of course, we never know what can happen on the ground, and we don't have the ultimate control of what's going on the ground. And so I'm in contact with our ambassador in Beirut. We've increased over the past weeks our footprint, our presence of diplomats in Beirut. And of course, we're following the events very closely. En français. Sorry about that. Premièrement, j'aimerais parler de ce qui se passe au Liban. Tout d'abord, j'aimerais vraiment offrir mes condoléances à la famille et aux proches des Canadiens qui sont décédés au Liban et également aux Canadiens qui ont été blessés au Liban. Nous sommes de tout cœur et je suis de tout cœur avec vous. Je partage bien entendu les préoccupations quant à ce qui se passe au Liban et on sait très bien que le Canada est un ami du peuple libanais, du peuple israélien et aussi du peuple palestinien. Et on sait que ce conflit doit cesser. C'est urgent qu'il y ait une désescalade parce qu'on ne veut pas qu'il y ait un conflit encore plus large à travers la région. C'est fondamental qu'on ramène la paix et la sécurité. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a trop d'enfants et trop de femmes et d'innocents qui ont été tués. Et donc, les familles qui sont en Israël, qui veulent revenir au nord d'Israël, et les familles qui sont au Liban, qui veulent revenir au sud du Liban, doivent être en mesure de retourner chez eux. L'Iran doit être absolument tenu responsable pour la violence de ces groupes et pour le financement de cette violence. J'étais à New York ce matin, j'ai eu plusieurs rencontres au cours des derniers jours. J'ai rencontré le ministre des Affaires étrangères du Liban. J'ai également eu une rencontre des ministres des Affaires étrangères du G7. J'ai eu plusieurs conversations avec le secrétaire d'État américain, Tony Blinken. J'ai été en contact également avec le ministre des Affaires étrangères israélien et j'aurai l'occasion de rencontrer le premier ministre libanais à New York samedi. Plus que jamais, également, nous devons aussi avoir un cessez-le-feu à Gaza. Les otages doivent être libérés, le Hamas doit déposer les armes et l'aide humanitaire doit être en mesure de rentrer à Gaza. Parce que la situation à Gaza est encore et toujours catastrophique. Le Canada croit que la seule façon de ramener la paix et la sécurité dans la région, ultimement, c'est de faire en sorte qu'il y ait une solution à deux États. Maintenant, lorsqu'on vient la question de l'évacuation et le Liban, ça fait maintenant des mois que nous travaillons sur des plans d'évacuation pour le Liban. Et c'est pourquoi, au mois de mai dernier, je me suis rendue dans la région pour préparer le tout. À l'époque, j'ai été en mesure de faire des ententes, non seulement avec le gouvernement libanais lui-même, mais également, je suis allée à Chypre, je suis allée à Turquie, je suis allée en Grèce, pour être en mesure aussi d'avoir des plans d'évacuation et des ententes avec ces différents pays. Et depuis les dernières semaines, nous avons prépositionné notre monde, nos diplomates, nos personnes de sécurité dans la région. Entre-temps, depuis maintenant des mois, je dis aux Canadiens qui sont au Liban de revenir à la maison et je dis également aux Canadiens libanais qui sont au Canada, qui veulent aller au Liban, de ne pas y aller. Pourquoi? Parce que, comme ministre des Affaires étrangères, ma première priorité est ultimement votre sécurité, la sécurité des Canadiens. Et donc, dans les circonstances, puisque j'étais préoccupée, j'ai fait ces différentes déclarations et je les réitère aujourd'hui. Entre-temps, nous n'allons jamais laisser tomber les Canadiens libanais. Nous savons que c'est important pour la communauté et c'est important pour moi également. Si vous êtes au Liban, il y a encore des vols commerciaux disponibles. Et ultimement, c'est la façon la plus simple et la plus sécuritaire pour revenir à la maison. Parce qu'au final, le Canada ne contrôle pas ce qui se passe sur le terrain. Alors, c'est pour ça que je réitère la nécessité pour les Canadiens qui sont au Liban de revenir par voie commerciale. Je suis en contact avec notre ambassadrice qui est à Beyrouth. Nous avons augmenté nos capacités diplomatiques et sécuritaires et aussi en matière d'immigration au cours des derniers mois au Liban. Et bien entendu, je suis les événements de très près. Merci.
Madame Joly, qu'est-ce que ça prendrait pour que l'opération de rapatriement se mette en branle? Donc, où est l'espèce de ligne rouge? Puis deuxièmement, il y a la possibilité d'une opération terrestre qui est en train d'être évoquée par Israël. En avez-vous parlé avec votre homologue israélien? Vous lui avez dit quoi?
Différentes choses. Si on va commencer avec l'évacuation, après sur la question de l'évacuation, c'est sûr que les plans sont prêts, mais en même temps, la règle a toujours été, tant aussi longtemps qu'il y a des vols commerciaux, une façon de pouvoir quitter un pays donné. À ce moment-là, on s'assure qu'on envoie le message aux gens de pouvoir prendre ces différents moyens commerciaux. Parce que aussi, c'est la façon la plus simple, la façon aussi la plus rapide, et la façon aussi la plus sécuritaire. L'aéroport de Beyrouth fonctionne présentement. Ce matin, il y avait encore 50 différents vols par jour. Et on veut s'assurer justement de travailler avec nos alliés pour bien suivre la question. Sur les plans d'évacuation, j'ai beaucoup travaillé aussi avec les Américains, avec les Australiens et également avec les Français. Et donc, encore cette semaine, j'étais en conversation avec Amos Hochstein, qui est le représentant américain pour le Liban, et j'ai été en contact aussi avec Jean-Yves Le Drian, qui est le représentant français pour également le Liban. Ça, c'est pour la question d'évacuation. Sur la question oui, c'est ça. Bien entendu, la position du Canada, c'est qu'il devrait avoir une déescalade, le conflit devrait arrêter. J'ai réitéré ces positions-là à mon homologue israélien. J'ai réitéré ces positions-là aussi au G7. Et il y a énormément de travail diplomatique qui se fait présentement, particulièrement à New York, alors que toutes les délégations diplomatiques du monde entier sont à New York pour faire de la pression, pour faire en sorte qu'il n'y ait pas d'escalade dans la région. Donc, c'est pour ça que pour moi, c'est important de retourner à New York et que j'y retourne vendredi. Sorry, I'll go there. Yes.
Yesterday,
Yeah.
he's counseled Israel not to act impulsively. Is it up to Israel to de-escalate at this point?
Well, of course, both parties. When we think about Lebanon, your question is on Lebanon or the entire conflict?
Well, you tell me.
No, so on Lebanon, of course, we urge parties, Hezbollah and Israel, to find a solution to de-escalate. And we need to make sure that we protect civilians at all time. This is, even in times of war, there are rules. And we need to make sure that both parties follow the rules. Because what we're seeing also right now is that Hezbollah is having an impact on civilians as well in Israel. In Israel, of course, and also in Lebanon. When it comes to also Gaza and the West Bank, of course, we absolutely need a ceasefire. We need to make sure that the war stops, and we need to make sure, ultimately, that there is a path for a two-state solution. And that is also why I've been engaged very much diplomatically with colleagues of the region. I'll be having a conversation and a meeting on Friday with my Jordanian counterpart, and of course I'll continue my conversation with the Israeli foreign minister.
On the evacuations, just two questions.
Yeah.
On the evacuations, the NDP are calling for an immediate evacuation now. Can you explain why that's not happening, and will an evacuation only happen in concert with other Canadian allies? And then can you also just confirm numbers? How many Canadians are injured in Lebanon and how many are killed?
Okay, so right now I can confirm that there are 2 Canadians that have been killed, and at the same time there are 3 Canadians that have been injured. So that's for that. When it comes to the evacuation, as I said, the plans are ready. We will be working also with with our allies on this issue. I must say Canada has been at the forefront of evacuation plans now for weeks, and we've also worked with the Americans and with the French and with the UK to explain what we were doing. And now you're seeing that the UK is getting to the level of preparedness of where Canada is. That being said, I think that it is very important for Canadians to know that that commercial flights are the simplest and safest way. Why? Because, of course, if the airport doesn't work anymore, well, then the evacuation plans are not about leaving by air. And that is why it is important to be able to leave by air now. Because, of course, it is much more difficult to leave by other means. Let's all remember that the difference between 2006 and now is that the port of Beirut exploded a couple of years ago. And that also complicates the way an evacuation could happen in Lebanon. So based on that, we've worked on different contingency plans, but fundamentally, it is important to leave now. We know that there are thousands of Canadians that are registered with us. We've seen recently a small increase of people wanting to have access to documents and making sure that they could come back. That's why we've increased the number of people that could treat the documentation that is required to leave. And that's why we are ready should basically things escalate even more. Yes, last question.
Est-ce que le Canada n'en fait pas assez pour arrêter ce qu'il considère être un génocide à Gaza?
Bien, sur la question de Gaza, écoutez, nous, ça fait depuis le mois de décembre qu'on a dit qu'il fallait non seulement qu'il y ait cessez-le-feu, mais qu'en plus, on devait augmenter l'aide humanitaire. On a soutenu aussi les efforts de UNRWA, qui est l'organisation qui vient en aide au niveau humanitaire. On respecte également ce que la Cour internationale de justice a mentionné. Donc, je pense qu'à ce stade-ci, au niveau du G7, pour nous, ce qui est fondamental, c'est de continuer de pousser les parties à ce qu'il y ait une fin du conflit.
Bonjour tout le monde, je vais faire une brève déclaration d'ouverture. Ensuite de ça, je suis disponible évidemment pour vos questions. On est extrêmement préoccupé par la situation au Liban, particulièrement dans le sud du Liban, qui subit des bombardements massifs depuis plusieurs jours de la part d'Israël. Des centaines de personnes ont été tuées, beaucoup de femmes et d'enfants aussi, des civils. Et on a appris avec beaucoup de tristesse que 2 Canadiens font partie des gens qui ont été tués. Alors évidemment, au nom du NPD, je vais exprimer toutes nos pensées et nos sympathies pour leurs familles et leurs proches. Mais de manière beaucoup plus importante, comme il y a 45 000 ressortissants canadiens au Liban en ce moment, on demande vraiment à Mélanie Joly, la ministre des Affaires étrangères, de mettre tous les moyens, toutes les ressources en œuvre pour être capable de rapatrier ces personnes-là ici au pays, de les mettre en sécurité. On a vu d'autres pays qui ont envoyé dans la région certaines ressources, comme la Grande-Bretagne. Il faut que le Canada agisse rapidement. La situation est très dangereuse, pas possibilité d'embrasement régional d'un conflit. Alors, il faut mettre les ressortissants canadiens en sécurité. Pour l'instant, on n'a pas vu beaucoup d'actions de la part du gouvernement libéral, mais il y a beaucoup de gens dans les communautés qu'on représente, qui ont de la famille et des amis là-bas, qui sont morts d'inquiétude en ce moment. Et ils attendent des décisions puis de l'action de la part du gouvernement libéral et de la ministre Mélanie Joly. So, in English, of course, the NDP, we are really preoccupied what's going on in Lebanon, in the south of Lebanon, where there's massive bombing hurting civilians. Hundreds of people already have been killed, many women and children. And sadly, we just learned that 2 Canadians are part of the victims of people being killed. So, of course, our thoughts are with their families and friends. But right now, what we are asking Mélanie Joly and the Liberal government is to do everything that is possible to get those Canadians there. 45,000 Canadians are now in Lebanon, to bring them back in the country, to help them to leave this country and to bring them here to be to be safe and in security. A lot of countries around the world are sending some resources, like United Kingdom. We didn't see yet any firm decision or action from the Liberal government, and we are representing thousands of Canadians that have Lebanese, background that are really, really worried about their friends and families there in Lebanon. So they want some action. They want to see the federal government committed to bring back as soon as possible everyone who wants to come back here in the country.
Do you feel like that should be a coordinated evacuation effort funded by the government? I mean, there's still commercial flights available to get out of Lebanon.
We saw in the past with other conflicts in other areas that it's possible to bring planes to make sure that they don't just rely on private companies, but there's some planes sent by the Canadian government there to bring back all those families and persons that want to come back here in Canada.
Thoughts on the scope of that evacuation effort? It would be a massive undertaking for this government.
But, it must be a massive undertaking because there's a massive number of Canadians that are trapped there, and it's a very, very dangerous area right now. We don't know what's going on in the next days and weeks, so we have to do everything that is possible. So that is our request to the federal government right now.
Mr. Blanchet said today that he's giving the Liberals until October 29th to pass 2 bills, and if they don't do so, he's going to come to the NDP as well as other parties. Are you aware of that deadline? Are you in talking with the Bloc about that?
Oh, no, not at all. They are making their own decisions. We are making our own decisions. Of course, about those 2 bills, we agree with the fact that we should help seniors in our country that are struggling, with the increased cost of living. And the Liberals made a mistake, discriminating seniors in this country, making 2 classes of seniors. And about the supply management, we, the NDP, we are strong supporter of the supply management for many, many years. So, of course, we agree with those 2 bills. But what we realize right now is that the Bloc Quebecois did nothing for Quebecers in the last 2 years. And now they are scrambling to find a way to be relevant and to provide some record. We achieved a lot. We provide anti-scab legislation. We provide pharmacare that is in the Senate right now. Dental care, almost 700,000 people, mostly seniors, got access to the dentist because of the work of the NDP. So I'm really proud of our record. I will leave the Bloc Québécois scrambling and trying to be relevant right now.
La date butoir du 29, qu'est-ce que ça vous dit? Est-ce que c'est quelque chose...
Écoutez, vous demanderez à M. Blanchet pourquoi la date du 29 octobre. J'en ai aucune raison. Peut-être que 2 jours avant l'Halloween, il veut faire peur au monde.
Qu'est-ce que vous pensez de l'ultimatum qui est lancé aujourd'hui par M. Blanchet?
Bien, écoutez, sur le fond, on veut aussi améliorer la pension des aînés au pays. On voit que les personnes âgées ont de la difficulté à payer leur épicerie comme tout le monde. Et puis, il y a beaucoup qui vivent dans la pauvreté. Sur la défense de la gestion de l'offre, le NPD a toujours défendu la gestion de l'offre. Alors, sur les 2 projets de loi, on est tout à fait d'accord. Mais là, ce qu'on se rend compte, c'est qu'après 2 ans où le Bloc québécois a amené absolument rien aux Québécois et aux Québécoises, bien là, il essaie de se grouiller pour trouver des poignées pour dire que hey, on a réussi ça, alors que nous, au NPD, on a un bilan qui est extrêmement clair, un gain historique pour les travailleurs avec la loi anti-briseur de grève, 10 journées de maladie, les bases d'une assurance médicaments publique puis universelle, puis surtout un plan de soins dentaires où il y a déjà près de 700 000 personnes au pays qui ont eu accès aux dentistes. Et ça, c'est une conséquence directe du travail du NPD. Et je soulignerais même que c'est au Québec où il y a le plus grand pourcentage de personnes qui ont eu accès aux dentistes grâce au travail du NPD. 205 000 personnes au Québec se sont fait payer le dentiste en tout ou en partie grâce à notre travail. C'est 32 % de tous ceux qui ont reçu des soins dentaires, alors que le Québec représente 23 % de la population. Alors, je comprends que le Bloc panique un peu, parce que c'est les Québécois qui ont le plus profité du nouveau programme que nous, on a forcé les libéraux à mettre sur pied. Alors, sur la... Non, nous, notre plan de match reste exactement le même. Si M. Blanchet veut se peinturer dans le coin, veut se fixer un propre calendrier ou des lignes rouges dans lesquelles il va pouvoir s'enfarger par la suite, ce n'est pas mon problème. Nous, au NPD, on va juger à la pièce, vote par vote, qu'est-ce qui est bon pour les gens, qu'est-ce qui aide les gens dans la situation actuelle ou pas, puis on prendra nos propres décisions, on fera notre propre stratégie.
Mais rendu au 29 octobre, si le Bloc met en place son ultimatum, est-ce qu'il dit qu'il veut négocier avec l'opposition? Est-ce que l'NPD va négocier avec le Bloc dans le but de faire tomber le gouvernement?
Écoutez, on verra qu'est-ce qui est sur la table à chaque vote. La semaine dernière, on ne savait pas qu'est-ce que le Bloc allait faire et on avait exactement la même réponse. Jack Meat avait la même réponse. Ce qu'on va faire, c'est qu'on va regarder est-ce que ça aide le monde ou ça aide pas le monde. Est-ce qu'on veut jouer le jeu des conservateurs puis de Pierre Poilievre ou alors est-ce qu'on veut être capable d'aller chercher des résultats concrets pour les gens? Alors, ce qu'on a montré, nous, dans les 3 dernières années, c'est qu'on veut amener de l'aide aux gens qui en ont le plus besoin. On a notre bilan, on a un paquet de réalisations. Puis là, je comprends que le Bloc essaye d'obtenir quelque chose un peu à la dernière minute, mais nous, ça ne change rien sur notre position fondamentale.
Comment est-ce que vous évaluez les chances d'élection cet automne?
Je n'ai pas de boule de cristal. On va prendre nos décisions à chaque semaine. On va avoir des discussions au sein du caucus. On va parler avec les intervenants qui sont concernés. Je ne peux pas faire de prédiction pour dans 3 semaines ou dans 3 mois. Là.
Les pancartes sont prêtes? Tout est prêt?
On est dans un mode préélectoral. On a des investisseurs, des candidats, des candidates qui sont déjà investis. Il y en a d'autres qui sont en recherche, sont en train de manifester leur intérêt. Alors, on sort de 2 élections partielles où le NPD a très, très bien fait. Une belle victoire. On a battu les conservateurs à Winnipeg. Puis on continue notre travail de préparation électorale.
Just back on Lebanon, I know you want Canada to help evacuate Lebanese Canadians.
Yes.
2 Canadians are dead. Does Canada also need to be putting pressure on Israel to stop what's going on right now? And how can they do that?
Of course, you know, those kind of massive bombings in cities and villages are so dangerous and are killing a lot of people. So we are asking the federal government to put pressure on Netanyahu regime to stop bombings in Gaza and in Lebanon. And with the NDP, we are asking the Liberals to stay with their words and to stop selling arms to Netanyahu.
I'm always going to stand up to bullies. When anyone makes a homophobic comment, I will respond, and that's something I need to do.
What did it take you 2 tries to withdraw?
Yeah, look, I'm happy to talk about the comments that were made in the House today. Clearly, the Conservative Party is a party that has real difficulty with queer people, 2S LGBTQI people and our rights. Look, I've dealt with this kind of discrimination and homophobic jokes my whole life, and you know, when I came out, I had friends who later said, look, we didn't know the effect this had on you growing up. And I think every Conservative MP needs to check themselves and realize that they've got queer people in their ridings and that this is not a locker room from the 1980s. Times have changed, and it's really too bad that the Conservative Party hasn't. En France, je dirais que les propos des conservateurs face au Premier ministre aujourd'hui étaient inacceptables. C'est des blagues homophobes qui n'ont pas de place dans notre société moderne, et surtout pas dans la Chambre des communes. On pense que c'est comme une équipe des années 80. C'est plus là. Les années où nous sommes rendus ici dans la Chambre de communes en 2024. Et regarde, moi j'ai subi cette discrimination, ces blagues quand j'étais jeune, et je sais qu'on a des jeunes à travers le pays pour lesquels ces blagues-là font vraiment mal, et on est des députés, et les députés doivent agir comme ils remontent.
Would you like to see an apology for it?
Absolutely. Look, somebody's being a coward. Somebody's hiding behind Parleview. Somebody is making a comment that's homophobic, and then a bunch of other people are laughing, and they're getting caught up in the audio, and now when they're caught out, they're being a coward. So which of the Conservative MPs is the coward today? Let's have them stand up.
Did you hear who it was?
I did not hear who it was. I was writing out a card to a constituent, and by the time I looked up, I couldn't peg who it was. But look, it's not cool. Like, look, take us, you know, we can talk about a $9 million condo in New York that's saving Canadians money, that's going to help us represent Canada in New York, but that's not the time to have a homophobic slur thrown at anybody, nonetheless the Prime Minister.
I missed the beginning. Who said what?
Well, I wish I knew. And what I said is there's a Conservative coward out there hiding behind Parleview and the fact that we don't know who it is. And so if you're going to make a homophobic joke, come up to the microphone and say it so you can be tagged properly.
But what's the homophobic joke?
I think what was said was, did you jump in the bathtub with him? For referring to Tom Clark and the Prime Minister. So that's not cool. And so, like, this is the kind of locker room talk that belongs in the 1980s. I know because I was in those locker rooms, and I was the queer kid that had to hide. And so that's like, whoever that MP is, they've got queer kids in their riding. And what they're hearing from their MP is that they don't belong.
What I heard about a bathtub was, does he engage with them in the bathtub? And he
well,
was referring to diplomats engaging with foreign leaders because Mr. Poilievre had just spoken about the copper bathtub.
The fact that it was the Prime Minister in an exchange with the Leader of the Opposition, it was very clearly directed at the Prime Minister and our Consul General in New York. So that's not cool, and I think people, look, if they want to come and clarify what they said in crosstalk in the House, come to the microphone and own up to it. Thanks, everyone. Merci beaucoup.
He ended up withdrawing some of the comments he made in response. I guess I'm wondering, are you worried that the tone of Parliament is just spiraling down here?
Well, look, the tone in Parliament has been spiraling down for some time, and it's our job as parliamentarians to keep that up. But look, homophobic slurs that get people's passions up do not help. And look, Aaron O'Toole lost his job because he had the guts to support an unanimous consent motion on ending something as odious as conversion therapy, which had affected over 20,000 men in this country. And then his backbench deposed him within weeks. So that's the state of the Conservative Party in 2024, when they can get away with those kind of jokes, and when a leader decides to stick up for the community, they get their head chopped off. Merci.
What do you think of Mr. Blanchet?
Mr. Blanchet, I think the best job in the world.
I mean, I'm sure he thinks it is. How are your bills doing, by the way?
Did you watch them on Monday?
Yeah, that's great.
Nobody cares about the bills.
No, I don't care. I just pretend I'm a politician. I'm just pretending to care about the bills. I'm a Ravens fan, so that's how.
L'ultimatum du Bloc Québécois pour le 29 octobre, qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
Ben, ils ont le droit de faire ce qu'ils veulent, de poser des ultimatums. C'est un peu ridicule.
Est-ce que, par exemple,
ils se donnent de travailler avec nous.
comme gouvernement, à accélérer l'adoption de ces deux projets de loi-là?
Ben, c'est pas quelque chose qu'on discuterait d'abord en public, mais le Bloc a un ultimatum, c'est ce que c'est. Ça vaut ce que ça vaut.
Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Ben,
ça vaut un ultimatum, n'importe qui peut les poser dans tout le gouvernement. On a le devoir de gouverner, puis on est en minorité, on va travailler avec le parti qui va nous appuyer.
Mais je comprends pas la position de votre gouvernement sur la pension de la sécurité de vieillesse. Êtes-vous ouvert à la bonifier comme le Bloc le demande?
Ben, ils font beaucoup de demandes. C'est une question de négociation puis de regarder ce qu'ils veulent. Ils ont un projet de loi qui est proposé. C'est une question de regarder, c'est pas à moi.
Donc, vous avez regardé, ça fait longtemps qu'il est déposé.
Oui. On n'est pas nécessairement d'accord.
Est-ce que la porte est fermée?
Non, on discute.
OK. C'est pas fermé.
La porte n'est pas fermée. Jamais fermé en politique. Il faut discuter, il faut négocier pour le bien des Canadiens.
Discutez pas fort.
Hein?
Ce qu'on comprend, c'est que ça discute pas fort.
Si vous voulez faire élire, vous pouvez le faire.
En coulisses non plus, ça discute
ça,
pas
vous
fort.
Ça, vous ne savez pas. Ben, c'est le Bloc qui le prétend. On est toujours c'est la première fois qu'ils prétendent avoir une certaine mainmise sur le pouvoir, donc ils vont devoir s'habituer. Mais il y a beaucoup de priorités au gouvernement, puis c'est pas nécessairement le Bloc qui dicte le temps.
What do you think of the October 29th deadline from the Bloc? We get the translation.
Did you watch Mr. Blanchet this afternoon? Did you see what he had to say this morning?
I didn't watch him, but I think I read about him.
So we've got this deadline for the 29th. Does it sound like there's a basis there for the government and the Bloc to see eye to eye?
Well, it doesn't change anything because we've been in discussion with the NDP and the Bloc for the last 3 years, and the NDP in particular. We will keep doing what is right for Canadians, which is to ensure that we have a government that can govern and do that for the benefit of Canadians.
But what do you make of the Bloc threat that they will be prepared to topple your government by October 29th unless they get some agreement on their bill?
We're obviously not going to be distracted by this political game in the House of Commons. We're going to invite everyone to focus on what is right for Canadians while making sure that this government and this Parliament does its job, which is to do its 4-year mandate for which we have been elected.
Êtes-vous prêt à accélérer l'étude du projet de loi sur la pension de la sécurité de vieillesse?
Ben, de toute évidence, on va faire ce qu'on fait depuis 3 ans. On va continuer à travailler avec les partis d'opposition. On a besoin de leur appui pour faire les choses qui sont importantes pour les Québécois.
Est-ce que ça veut dire accélérer l'étude de ce projet de loi-là sur la pension de vieillesse?
Ça veut dire faire les choses qu'on fait depuis toujours, c'est-à-dire de travailler avec le NPD et le Bloc québécois pour s'assurer que le gouvernement puisse faire son travail pour les Québécois.
On
nous a élus pour 4 ans. Les gens nous disent qu'on a une job de 4 ans à faire, il faut la faire.
Is your government seriously, or how seriously, is your government seriously considering supporting their bill that's going to increase pensions for seniors up to the tune of $16 billion? Is that something your government is seriously consider doing?
Well, Madam Freeland and myself were answering the same question yesterday, and they said the same thing to the two of us, which is that we will discuss, and we're discussing with the NDP and the Bloc. We've been doing that for 3 years now. We are in a minority government, and that's what we need to do in order to do what is important, which is to work and fight for Canadians.
What's the status of
money's tight between pharmacare and NATO. How do you find $16 billion?
Mr. Guilbeault, what do you make of the Bloc and their October 29th deadline?
I'm sorry? What do you make of the Bloc saying they'll topple the government on after October 29th if there's not progress on the seniors' benefit being increased and supply management?
You should, my apologies, you should really talk to Minister Gould about this. I haven't had a chance to speak to the Bloc MPs by any of this. Thank you very much.
Nous sommes Parti vert, évidemment. Mon nom est Elizabeth May, chef du Parti vert du Canada, et mon collègue et partenaire dans la Chambre, député de Kitchener Centre, Mike Morrice. We haven't disclosed how we plan to vote today, so I'm sure everybody is on the edge of their seats. But honestly, it wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't a no-brainer. We have not voted confidence in the Liberal government since they bought the Kinder Morgan pipeline. Not on any money bill have we voted confidence in a government that bought the Kinder Morgan pipeline and spent $34 billion building it. But this motion, coming forward as it does, with the timing of a Conservative stunt and not a substantive moment when it would make sense to hold a national election, is one where we've concluded the appropriate decision of the Green Party of Canada in support of healthy Canadian democracy is to vote no. I'll say for myself, as a member of Parliament, comme députée de Colombie-Britannique, j'ai fait un peu de sondage avec ma circonscription. S'il vous plaît, envoyez les messages, oui ou non. So I got a lot of emails from my constituents. I didn't get a single person saying, please vote with Poilievre. All the messages I got said, we're in the middle of a British Columbia election here. And, of course, if I'd been a New Brunswick MP, same point. There are 3 consequential provincial elections now. Mr. Poilievre is staging a stunt. It's a waste of our time in Parliament, but I imagine we'll have more time wasting motions like this. We will be voting that we cannot support the Conservative Party motion. I now turn to Mike Morrice.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Mike Morrice here, MP for Kitchener Centre. In addition to what Elizabeth shared, part of it for someone like myself who's thinking about what's in the best interest of folks in my community, whether it is addressing the rising cost of housing, whether it's addressing legislated poverty for folks with disabilities. Things have been very difficult and deeply disappointing working with the governing party over the last number of years. But certainly, as I shared on the floor of the House yesterday, don't see that improving should we go to an election and with the polls as they are to see a Conservative government in place. Not only that, though, there's also something to be said for the continuity. Things like the Canada Disability Benefit, although deeply disappointing and completely insufficient, is slated to be delivered in July of 2025. As of right now, nothing has improved for folks with disabilities. When it comes to moving forward with that benefit, having the continuity and more assuredness to get closer to that date on projects like that, on getting more accountability for two-way all-day GO train service between Kitchener and Toronto, for example. These are the kinds of priorities I heard from folks in my community all summer long, and our interest as Greens is to be here to advocate for the interests of our constituents, and this is a decision that we feel is in their best interest. I'll pass it back to Elizabeth for questions that you might have.
Ms. May, given that you called what the Conservatives doing a stunt, the Bloc Quebecois says they're giving the government till October 29th to pass 2 bills, or maybe even earlier, they'd be prepared to vote with the Conservatives to bring down the Trudeau government. What do you make of that?
I think it's completely predictable that having Mr. Singh withdraw from the confidence and supply agreement, the balance de pouvoir est maintenant avec le Bloc Québécois. I don't think for 1 minute that Mr. Blanchet, I appreciate his saying that the Bloc are now the adults in the room. Hello, the Green Party is here, and we remain the adults in the room. There will be jockeying for position. There will be trading, there will be bribes, and there will be offers to be bribed, and it will continue until after the next budget. And then the question is, depending on which party benefits the most or perceives they've benefited the most from the next budget, the budget will succeed or fail. In other words, Tonda, I don't think it's unusual at all that Mr. Blanchet has put forward some asks. He has a private member's bill on the go to improve pension benefits. That's a legitimate thing to pursue. I'd also say, like Mike.
Well, so what do you mean by bribes?
Well, look, it's not personal. I'm not saying that any individual MP, contrary to what Mr. Poilievre said, I don't think Mr. Singh is motivated by personal financial interests. But this is politics in Canada. We know that sometimes to get a budget passed, a governing party will provide more concessions to a smaller party to get the budget through. We know the 2005 budget was famously written by Jack Layton. These are not new developments in Canadian politics in a minority parliament.
En français, vous pensez quoi de l'ultimatum du Bloc québécois?
Je pense que le Bloc québécois reste, et M. Blanchet vraiment est quelqu'un qui a dit qu'il est l'adulte dans la Chambre. Nous sommes aussi comme verts, les adultes dans la Chambre. J'apprécie beaucoup que le Bloc québécois est le seul parti maintenant à l'opposition qui reste en faveur d'agir contre la crise climatique. Nous sommes comme verts, le seul autre parti, avec les principes pour protéger notre climat pour l'avenir. En même temps, et ce n'est pas une grande surprise qu'il y a les lois des députés dans le Bloc québécois, les lois éminentes de députés qui restent sans passage. Et M. Blanchet a décidé que ça, c'est une étape. Il exigeait que les libéraux acceptaient avant la fin d'octobre. On doit rester attendre pour les résultats, mais ce n'est pas une grosse demande, mais en même temps, c'est très important d'avoir les dernières étapes sur Pharmacare pour la santé publique, pour le soin dental. Il y a les choses aussi très importantes, les droits pour les peuples autochtones pour sécurité de l'eau. So there are a lot of bills that we've put work into that would be good to get over the finish line before we end up in an election.
Ms. May, were you there last week when Jagmeet Singh was on the floor and
Yes.
he seemed to be... Can you tell us what happened?
Well, I wasn't near. I've spoken to another one of my colleagues who said that Pierre Poilievre didn't notice him. But it seemed to me that the taunts were getting... Well, we couldn't hear anything clearly, say that. But what I've witnessed was Mr. Singh leave his seat and enter the main aisle with an aggressive stance. He had just come through something that must have been very distressing in directly confronting someone who'd been heckling him up close. So his response to very unparliamentary language from Mr. Poilievre and calling him a fake and a liar, and I'm forgetting all the exact words, but they will come back at the point the Speaker rules on them. At that moment, Mr. Singh's approach was, I'm afraid to say, I felt like all of the chamber was descending to what felt like a schoolyard of competing teams saying, yeah, come over here and try that. It was a very uncomfortable climate and one that I hope I never see in Parliament again.
Not talking to CTV after what happened out there. Sorry.
Well, what we're seeing is a pattern by the leader of the opposition. It's CBC, it's CP, it's CTV. Poilievre goes after journalists constantly. He attacks the credibility of our Canadian media constantly. And this is absolutely inappropriate from a guy who says he wants to be the next Prime Minister, the leader of a G7 country. In this country, we have counterpowers. There's opposition. There's people that don't agree with the leader of the opposition, and you should listen and talk with people instead of attacking constantly.
Do you find that in your existence on the Hill, talking to journalists, that the media is biased in favor of the Trudeau government?
I'm not going to comment directly on that, but what I'm going to say is that our Canadian media respect journalistic code of ethics. They are professionals. In the case of CTV or any other news outlet that makes a mistake, their obligation is to correct it and to apologize. That's exactly what CTV did. And the news sector is completely independent from any political party, from the government. The role of a journalist is to investigate, is to ask difficult questions, and our role as politicians is to be as transparent as possible and to answer questions.
And based on Blanchet's his demands for the passing those two bloc bills by October 29th, what do you make of that? Do you think that's possible? Should the government meet those demands?
We'll see what happens. Okay. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
So I think today is a good day for Canadians because parliamentarians, except for the Conservative Party of Canada, are committed to getting to work and making sure that we are focused on doing the things that matter to Canadians. Unlike the Conservative Party of Canada, who just want to play games and quite frankly are only in it for the personal political benefit of their leader, the other parties in the House are serious about getting down to business, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Alors aujourd'hui, c'est une bonne journée pour les Canadiens parce qu'on a vu que les trois partis dans cette Chambre sont là pour travailler pour les Canadiens. Il y a un parti, le Parti conservateur, qui est seulement là pour jouer des jeux politiques, pour faire des chicanes et seulement pour les ambitions personnelles de leur leader et pas pour les Canadiens. So we are going to get back to work and do the hard work of governing this country, which is what parliamentarians are there to do.
How long can you survive confidence vote after confidence vote? Even today, the Bloc Quebecois is fixing the deadline of October 29th to make sure that their two legislative priorities get through, and you haven't really given them a firm yes or no on that.
Well, as I said a couple of weeks ago, or it feels like a couple of weeks that we've been here. It's only been 7 days. But as I said 7 days ago, when we returned to this parliamentary session, we are going to work piece of legislation by piece of legislation, issue by issue, negotiating with the different political parties to continue to advance the important work of governing. And so it's going to be day by day, week by week. But what I can tell you is that Liberal MPs are here to work for Canadians, here to continue to ensure that we are doing the things that matter to them. And that's what my job is, and that's what I'll be focused on.
We'll not give you a deadline now, so I'm just wondering, when will we hear from the government on your stance on their demands?
Well, I don't negotiate in public, but what I can tell you is that I speak to all of the House leaders on a regular basis, including the Conservatives, which might surprise you, but that's something that I will always do and look forward to negotiating with all of them as we move forward.
Mr. Blanchet said today, though, that he hasn't heard much from your government on these demands. So do you feel like you need to start making a bit more progress there if you want to stop there being more of these confidence motions and to be able to hold on until fall of 2025?
Well, look, the only party that is putting forward these confidence motions are the Conservatives because they are playing games, and I find it actually quite kind of lame that, just moments after they have lost that motion in the House of Commons, they're putting forward another one. I think what we're seeing today is that, this House does not have confidence in the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. And that is something that, what we hear from the opposition parties is just how bad he would be for Canada. So we'll take it day by day, but, I'm going to continue to work with the other parties and work for Canadians.
When does your party want to go to an election?
We are committed to making sure that we deliver for Canadians. There's a fixed election date in just over a year from now. We're in a minority parliament, so we're going to have to see how things go. But my job is to do that hard work of negotiating with the other parties. And what I can say is that I think today was a good day for the country, because I don't think Canadians want an election. What they want to see is politicians, legislatures working together and working for Canadians. And we saw that 3 parties in the House can do that. There's only one party that can't. It's the Conservatives, and it's because it is all about their own personal political ambition, and it is not about Canadians.
Can your government hold on until, and can you actually talk about what